Hashem's height required him to bow as he entered the airplane. His dull copper skin and modest beard were enough to alert several of the passengers already aboard. Despite his need to duck as he worked his way down the narrow aisle, his slender frame made him unobtrusive to fellow passengers, even if his skin tone did strike some of the less enlightened travelers as threatening. Having already endured an extensive search at customs, he was not alarmed nor surprised by the suspicious stares of his fellow passengers. He came to accept this degree of racial prejudice after several years in the United States, even though most of that time was spent at a relatively liberal state university. Hashem was traveling home to Yemen today for a brief celebration, planning to soon return to the States to investigate some promising entry-level job offers in his field. Most of his professors were so impressed by his zeal for academia that they encouraged him to consider further undergraduate studies. A modest smile claimed his lips, having just left a ceremony for completing his master's program. Dressed in a butterscotch suit, he breathed a sigh of relief as he took his seat. Content with himself, Hashem closed his eyes, resting his carry-on bag upon his lap. The trip home would consist of 3 connecting flights, including a long stretch across the waiting ocean. This would be nothing compared to the intellectual and personal journeys he'd taken to get to this point. He had embraced the linguistic, emotional, and financial tribulations of moving overseas. He'd survived the relentless reign of ignorance and prejudice that comes with living in the United States after being born in the Middle East. Everything would be different now, though, with his advanced degree in hand and a grasp of the American culture to which he now belonged. That being said, he was looking forward to visiting and seeing his family, friends, and country once again. Hashem's eyes were not at rest for long. The flight attendant didn't even have a chance to interrupt his moment of quiet reflection with a trite spiel about intricate details of seatbelt application before a neighboring passenger's voice alerted him. The snarling white man across the aisle crassly asked, "What's in the bag, towelhead?" Hashem's modest smile was unfazed by the man's gruff comment. He silently turned away and ran one set of his long fingers through his thick black hair, which was not at all concealed by cloth or a turban of any kind. His neighbor didn't seem satisfied, but rather provoked by the silence, and responded with an aggressive shove of Hashem's shoulder through his suit. Raising an eyebrow, he craned his neck toward the man with a universal expression of confusion. "I said what's in the bag. Can't hear me? Can't understand me? Or are you just too rude to answer a simple question, Mohammed?" Hashem glanced at his bag, back to the man, then to the bag once more, smiling to himself as the man's irate behavior elevated, and the surrounding passengers seemed to co-sign with their endearing silence. Hashem's hand smoothed over the beaten old leather, fingertips sliding beneath the opening flap. He did his best to ignore his intolerant new travel companion, who insisted loudly enough for the captain to hear from the cabin that if you can't speak English, you don't deserve to be in this country, pontificating about all of his rights. Why are so many Americans this eager to brag about their rights so often, even the rights that don't exist? It appeared that this man's right to know the contents of Hashem's carry-on luggage superseded Hashem's right to quietly sit unharassed on a flight for which he'd paid. According to the classes he'd taken to achieve legal dual citizenship years ago, this seemed to Hashem to be a stark contrast to how rights actually functioned in this country. He wondered if this boisterous white native of the land of the free had taken similar classes. At the apex of the angry man's volume, Hashem interrupted a run-on sentence consisting mostly of racial slurs by suddenly standing up so quickly he could have injured himself if he'd forgotten to keep his head low. He towered over the red-faced American now, who leaned back, as did several other passengers with ignorant fear as Hashem opened his bag. 4 words calmly and smoothly projected from Hashem's grinning lips. "Can you read this?" he asked, extracting from his bag a freshly pressed master's degree in English.